He may even identify himself with it and believe that he is what he appears to be.
Welcome to the NCE Study Guide. I created this study guide using ChatGPT and Notebook LM. So think of these modules as AI-powered audio flashcards. Each one of these 20 modules contains 10 mock questions, representing the kind of questions that you might encounter on the National Counseling exam. I created this primarily for myself, and I decided to make these available to anyone else who might benefit from this kind of study aid. But please note, while I have done my best to ensure that these modules align with NCE content, I encourage you to cross-reference them with trusted study guides and resources for the most accurate preparation. These modules are not affiliated with or endorsed by the NBCC or any official licensing board. So, with no further ado, here are your AI study buddies from Notebook LM. Enjoy!
Welcome back to the deep dive.
Module 18 already.
We are getting so close to being done with these NCE modules.
Only 2 left after this.
I know. It's very exciting.
And we've got something special today.
Yes, you've been using AI to help you study.
Right. Notebook LM. So cool.
It's like having a super smart study buddy in your pocket.
And today we're diving into some practice questions from the study guide it helped create.
Think of it like AI-powered flashcards.
Let's jump right into question 171.
It asks, which of the following is a key component of solution-focused brief therapy? SFBT.
Okay.
Here are the options. A, exploring past traumatic experiences. B, identifying and amplifying exceptions to problems. C, analyzing unconscious processes. D, developing insight into emotional responses.
All right, let's unpack these.
Option A, exploring past traumatic experiences. That sounds pretty intense.
Well, it is important in some therapies, especially when dealing with trauma.
Right, like if someone is struggling with PTSD from a specific event.
Exactly. Understanding that past trauma is super important for healing, but that's not the main focus in SFBT.
Gotcha. So different tools for different situations.
Yeah.
Option B, identifying and amplifying exceptions to problems. What does that even mean?
It's all about finding those moments when the problem isn't a problem. Those exceptions, like little glimmers of hope.
Interesting.
Imagine a client is struggling with anxiety.
Okay.
Instead of diving into their childhood, a solution-focused therapist might ask about times when they felt less anxious. What was different in those moments?
So it's about shifting the focus from what's wrong to what's working.
Exactly. Helping the client see their own strengths and build on those moments of success.
I like that, focusing on solutions. Okay, option C, analyzing unconscious processes.
Ah, now that's the domain of psychodynamic therapy. Think psychoanalysis.
Deep dives into the subconscious.
Exactly. Uncovering those hidden patterns and past experiences that might be influencing the present. But remember, SFBT is more about finding solutions in the here and now.
Okay, so 2 very different approaches, but both valuable in their own way.
For sure.
All right, lastly, we have option D, developing insight into emotional responses.
Well, understanding your emotions is super important for personal growth, right?
Absolutely, for any kind of therapy, I'd imagine.
You're right. But SFBT takes a different approach. It's less about dissecting those emotions and more about taking action.
So less analysis, more action.
Exactly. It's about figuring out what you can do about it, not just understanding why you feel a certain way.
Okay, so the question was, which of the following is a key component of solution-focused brief therapy? SFBT.
Right.
We've discussed all 4 options.
And the answer is B, identifying and amplifying exceptions to problems.
Right, because it's all about finding those moments when the problem fades away.
Exactly. You're helping clients discover their own solutions, not dwelling on past issues.
Love that. Okay, on to question 172, and this one is about group dynamics.
Fun.
It asks, in group therapy, which of the following is considered a maintenance role? And the options are A, recorder, B, energizer, C, harmonizer, D, evaluator.
Group therapy, huh?
Yeah, I have kind of a love-hate relationship with group projects. They can be awesome when everyone clicks, but also so much potential for chaos.
Right. And that's why understanding group roles is so crucial.
For sure. So are these roles like the key players in a well-functioning group?
You got it. You've got your task roles, which are all about getting things done, and your maintenance roles, which focus on keeping the group healthy and, not imploding.
Okay, 2 sides of the same coin. Let's start with option A, the recorder. What does that role involve?
The recorder's all about documentation, taking notes, summarizing progress, that kind of thing.
So like the group secretary, making sure everything is documented and organized.
Exactly. Important, but not always the most exciting job.
True. What about option B, the energizer? That sounds more fun.
Oh, absolutely. They bring the enthusiasm, encouragement, keeping the energy up. Think of them like the group cheerleader.
Every group needs one of those. All right. Option C, the harmonizer.
Ah, the peacemaker.
Smoothing over disagreements.
Right, exactly. Helping everyone feel heard and keeping the group on track. Essential for a positive group dynamic.
Makes sense, especially when things get a little tense. Okay, last one, option D, the evaluator.
The evaluator's the one who takes a step back and looks at the big picture.
Like, how's the group doing overall? Are we meeting our goals? What can we improve?
Exactly. They provide that objective feedback that helps the group function more effectively.
So the question is, in group therapy, which of the following is considered a maintenance role?
Yes.
We've looked at all 4 options.
And the correct answer is C, the harmonizer.
Because they're all about maintaining those positive relationships within the group.
Exactly. While all the roles are important, the harmonizer's focus on keeping the group cohesive and resolving conflict is what makes it a maintenance role.
Makes sense.
Yeah.
Okay, next up, question 173. This one's about defense mechanisms, those sneaky ways our minds try to protect us.
Oh, I love this topic.
It asks, which defense mechanism involves redirecting unacceptable impulses into socially acceptable behaviors?
Okay.
Our options are A, repression, B, projection, C, sublimation, D, displacement. I think we've all used our fair share of defense mechanisms at some point, right?
Oh, absolutely. They're like our mind's little defense strategies, right? Sometimes they work, sometimes not so much.
Exactly. So let's start with option A, repression.
Repression is like stuffing things down, pushing those unwanted thoughts or impulses deep down into the unconscious, out of sight, out of mind, kind of.
Okay, I can see how that could be tempting, but not always the healthiest approach.
Right. It's like sweeping things under the rug, but that dusk bunny is still there.
Good point. What about option B, projection? I was thinking of those ink blot tests, seeing things in random shapes.
Haha. Yeah, projection is a bit like that. It's when you take your own uncomfortable feelings and put them onto someone else.
So instead of acknowledging your own anger, you accuse someone else of being angry.
Exactly. A classic blame game. It's a way of externalizing those feelings we don't want to deal with.
Interesting. Okay, what about option C, sublimation? That sounds a bit more refined.
Sublimation is like taking that raw, unacceptable energy and channeling it into something positive.
Oh, like finding a healthy outlet for those feelings.
Exactly. Think of an artist who turns their pain into a beautiful painting, or an athlete channeling their aggression into a winning performance.
So it's like using those impulses for good. I like that.
Yeah.
All right, and lastly, option D, displacement.
Displacement is all about redirecting that impulse onto a safer target.
So like having a bad day at work and coming home and yelling at your partner.
Oof, yeah. It's not really dealing with the root of the problem, just redirecting those feelings onto someone who's less threatening. Not healthy, for sure.
Right, it's not solving anything, just passing the buck. So the question is, which defense mechanism involves redirecting unacceptable impulses into socially acceptable behaviors?
Okay.
And we've looked at all 4 options.
And the answer is C, sublimation.
Right, because it's all about transforming those potentially destructive impulses into something positive and productive.
Exactly. And remember, for the not-so-healthy defenses, think of repression, regression, and reaction formation.
Good tips to keep in mind. All right, moving on to question 174. This one's about adapting to new cultures, which feels particularly relevant in today's globalized world.
Absolutely. We're all interconnected.
The question is, which term refers to the process of adapting to and incorporating aspects of a new culture while maintaining one's original cultural identity?
Okay.
Here are our options. A, assimilation. B, acculturation. C, cultural relativism. D, ethnocentrism.
So many important concepts here.
I know, right?
Yeah.
Let's start with option A, assimilation. What does that involve?
Assimilation is like a complete immersion in the new culture.
So you're essentially adopting the customs, values, and even the language of the new culture.
Exactly. It's like a full cultural makeover, blending in completely.
Wow, so you're essentially leaving behind your old cultural identity and embracing the new one.
Pretty much. Now, option B, acculturation, is a bit different.
Okay, how so?
It's more like adding spices to a dish. You're incorporating new flavors while still maintaining the essence of the original recipe.
Ah, so you're adapting to the new culture, but also holding on to your own cultural heritage.
Exactly. It's about finding that balance between integrating and preserving.
I like that, embracing the new without losing the old. Okay, what about option C, cultural relativism?
Cultural relativism is all about understanding and respecting different cultural perspectives.
So it's about recognizing that different cultures have different values and norms,
Yeah.
and that no one culture is inherently superior or inferior.
Exactly. It's about appreciating cultural differences without judging them through the lens of your own culture.
That's such an important perspective. And lastly, we have option D, ethnocentrism.
Ethnocentrism is the opposite of cultural relativism. It's the belief that your own culture is superior to others.
So it's like having a very narrow view of the world, judging everyone else based on your own standards.
Right. And that can obviously lead to prejudice and discrimination. Not good.
Okay, so the question is, which term refers to the process of adapting to and incorporating aspects of a new culture while maintaining one's original cultural identity?
Right.
We've explored all four options.
The answer is B, acculturation. Remember, it's that process of integrating into a new culture while still honoring and preserving your own heritage.
Got it. It's about finding that sweet spot between embracing the new and holding on to the old. All right, on to question 175. This one takes us back to Piaget's stages of cognitive development.
Oh,
The question is, in Piaget's theory of cognitive development, which stage is characterized by egocentrism and difficulty understanding others' perspectives?
okay, I remember this one.
And the options are A, sensorimotor, B, pre-operational, C, concrete operational, D, formal operational. Piaget's theory is fascinating, like watching a child's mind unfold.
It is. It shows how our thinking evolves over time.
Right. So let's start with option A, the sensorimotor stage. What are the key things happening here?
Well, this stage is all about babies, you know? They're experiencing the world through their senses and movements. It's a lot of putting things in their mouths, learning about object permanence, cause and effect.
So that's why babies get so fascinated by peekaboo. They think you've disappeared, and then you magically reappear.
Exactly. It's like their whole world is changing with every new discovery. Amazing to watch.
It really is. Okay, what about option B, the pre-operational stage?
This stage is when imagination and language really start to blossom. Kids are using symbols, words, they're telling stories, but they're still pretty egocentric.
Meaning?
They have trouble understanding that others see the world differently than they do.
So it's like they're the center of their own little universe, and everyone else sees things the same way they do?
Exactly. Like, a child in this stage might think the moon is following them because they can't grasp that others see the moon from a different perspective.
That's both fascinating and frustrating, I imagine. What about option C, the concrete operational stage?
This stage is when kids start thinking more logically. They can understand concrete concepts like conservation.
Like understanding that the amount of liquid stays the same, even if you pour it into a different shaped container.
Exactly. They're less reliant on their immediate perceptions and can start to reason things out.
Okay, so they're becoming little problem solvers.
Yeah.
What about option D, the formal operational stage?
This is the big leagues. This is where abstract thinking really comes online.
So we're talking teenagers and adults now.
Right. They can think about hypothetical situations, they can solve problems systematically, consider different perspectives.
That's a huge leap from those egocentric early years.
It is. It's like their minds have opened up to a whole new world of possibilities.
Okay, so the question was, in Piaget's theory of cognitive development, which stage is characterized by egocentrism and difficulty understanding others' perspectives?
Right.
We've discussed all four stages.
And the answer is B, pre-operational.
That stage where kids are using language and symbols, but haven't quite mastered the art of perspective taking?
Exactly. It's a crucial step in cognitive development.
Okay, on to question 176, and this one deals with a serious topic, the duty to warn. It asks, what is the primary purpose of the duty to warn in counseling ethics?
That's a heavy one.
I know, right?
Mm-hmm.
This is about that delicate balance between protecting client confidentiality and ensuring the safety of others.
Exactly. A really tough ethical dilemma that every counselor faces.
Absolutely. Here are our options. A, to protect the counselor from legal liability. B, to inform clients about their rights. C, to notify third parties of potential harm. D, to uphold confidentiality. So much to consider here.
It is complex.
Let's start with option A, to protect the counselor from legal liability.
Well, that is a factor to consider, of course, but it's not the main reason for the duty to warn.
So it's not just about self-preservation for the counselor.
No, it's about something much bigger than that.
Okay, what about option B, to inform clients about their rights?
That's super important. Clients absolutely need to know their rights, and that's part of building trust and transparency in the therapeutic relationship. But again, it's not the specific purpose of the duty to warn.
Right. It's a separate but equally important ethical obligation.
Yes.
Okay, what about option C, to notify third parties of potential harm?
Now we're getting to the heart of it. The duty to warn is about protecting potential victims.
So if a client reveals a credible threat to harm someone, the therapist has an obligation to warn that person, even if it means breaking confidentiality.
It's a difficult decision, but yes, it's about putting safety first.
Wow. So there are situations where confidentiality isn't absolute.
Right, it's not always black and white. It's about weighing those ethical obligations carefully.
And then there's option D, to uphold confidentiality.
Confidentiality is crucial for the therapeutic relationship, no doubt. It creates that safe space for clients to open up and be vulnerable. But the duty to warn recognizes that sometimes protecting others from harm outweighs that right to privacy.
So it's like a moral dilemma,
Yeah.
weighing those two competing values.
Exactly. It's a really tough call, and it requires careful ethical decision-making.
Okay, so the question was, what is the primary purpose of the duty to warn in counseling ethics?
Right.
We've considered all four options.
And the answer is C, to notify third parties of potential harm.
It's about preventing harm and protecting potential victims, even if it means breaking confidentiality. A heavy but necessary responsibility.
It is. But ultimately, it's about saving lives.
Absolutely.
Okay.
Okay, let's move on to question 177. This one's about career counseling theories.
Oh, okay. This should be interesting.
The question asks, which career counseling theory emphasizes the role of career maturity and life stages?
Right.
And the options are A, Holland's theory of vocational choice, B, Crumbles' social learning theory, C, Super's developmental theory, D, Ginsberg's career development theory. I've always been fascinated by how people find their career paths.
Me too. It's such a personal journey.
Right. So many twists and turns. Okay, let's break down these theories. Option A, Holland's theory of vocational choice. What's that all about?
Holland's theory is all about finding a good fit
A good fit between...
your personality and the work environment.
Okay, so like, if you're a super social person, a job where you're isolated all day probably wouldn't be a good fit.
Exactly. The idea is that people are happier and more successful when their careers align with their interests, values, and skills.
That makes sense. So it's like finding that sweet spot where you thrive.
Exactly. Now, option B, Krumboltz's social learning theory.
Okay, tell me about that one.
Krumboltz emphasized the role of learning experiences. The idea is that our past experiences, both positive and negative, influence our career aspirations and decisions.
So it's like those experiences shape our career journey.
Exactly. It's like our past is creating a roadmap for our future.
Interesting. Now, option C, Super's developmental theory.
This is the one that specifically focuses on career maturity and life stages.
Okay, tell me more about that.
Super recognized that careers aren't static. They change and evolve over time, just like we do.
Makes sense. Like what we're passionate about in our 20s might not be what lights us up in our 40s.
Exactly. We go through different career stages. Exploration, establishment, maintenance, and eventually decline.
And our career maturity, our ability to make those thoughtful career decisions, that also grows over time.
Right. It's all connected to those life stages.
That makes a lot of sense. And lastly, option D, Ginsberg's career development theory.
Ginsberg also focused on career development as a process, one that unfolds over time. He emphasized three main stages: fantasy, tentative, and realistic.
So like starting with those childhood dreams.
Right. And then as we mature, our career choices become more grounded in reality.
Okay, so it's about moving from those pie-in-the-sky aspirations to more practical considerations. So the question is, which career counseling theory emphasizes the role of career maturity and life stages?
Yes.
And we've looked at all four options.
The answer is C. Super's developmental theory. Remember, it's the theory that specifically highlights those life stages and how they influence our career decisions.
Okay, I'm liking Super's theory. It feels very relatable. All right, let's move on to question 178. This one's about a specific type of therapy for trauma-focused cognitive behavioral therapy, or TFCBT for short.
Right, an evidence-based approach for helping people heal from trauma.
Exactly. The question is, what is the primary focus of trauma-focused cognitive behavioral therapy, TFCBT?
Okay.
And here are the options. A, exploring childhood relationships. B, processing traumatic experiences and building coping skills. C, addressing cultural influences on trauma. D, enhancing family communication. So much to consider here, especially given the sensitive nature of this topic.
It is important work, and it requires a delicate approach.
For sure. Let's start with option A, exploring childhood relationships.
Well, relationships are important in many therapies, but that's not the core focus of TFCBT.
Okay, so it's not about broadly digging into the past.
Not necessarily. It's more targeted than that.
All right, what about option B, processing traumatic experiences and building coping skills?
That's the essence of TFCBT.
So it's about helping individuals understand and work through those traumatic experiences in a safe and structured way.
Exactly. And it's also about equipping them with healthy coping mechanisms to manage those difficult emotions and thoughts that can arise after trauma.
So it's like providing a roadmap for healing, both emotionally and practically.
Right, giving them the tools they need to move forward.
I like that. Okay, option C, addressing cultural influences on trauma.
Understanding cultural influences is crucial in any therapy, for sure.
Absolutely, because trauma can manifest differently depending on someone's background and cultural beliefs.
Exactly. And while TFCBT can be adapted to be culturally sensitive, that's not its primary focus.
Okay, so it's a consideration, but not the core of the therapy itself.
Right.
What about option D, enhancing family communication?
Especially when working with children and adolescents, family involvement is super important in TFCBT.
Yeah, because trauma often impacts the whole family system.
Exactly. So TFCBT often includes family sessions to improve communication and build that support network. But again, it's not the sole focus of the therapy.
Okay, it's a component, but not the defining feature. So the question is, what is the primary focus of trauma-focused cognitive behavioral therapy, TFCBT?
Right.
We've looked at all 4 options.
The answer is B, processing traumatic experiences and building coping skills.
So it's about providing that structured, evidence-based approach to help individuals heal from trauma and move forward.
Exactly. It's about giving them the tools to reclaim their lives.
Okay, ready for a brain teaser. Question 179 is all about statistics.
Oh boy, here we go. Stats.
It asks, which statistical measure indicates how much scores in a dataset differ from the mean?
All right.
And here are our options: A mode, B median, C variance, D range. Statistics can definitely feel intimidating.
For sure. But they're actually pretty cool once you get to know them.
Good to hear. So let's break them down one by one. Option A, the mode.
The mode is the most frequent score in a data set. Like, if you have a bunch of numbers, the mode is the one that shows up the most often.
Okay, so if you have a bunch of test scores, the mode would be the score that most students received.
Exactly. Like the most popular song on the radio. You hear it everywhere.
Gotcha. What about option B, the median?
The median is the middle score when the data is ordered.
Okay, so like lining up all the students from shortest to tallest and picking the one in the middle.
Exactly. It's the midpoint of the data set.
Okay, I can visualize that. Now, option C, variance.
Variance measures how spread out the data is.
So like how much the individual scores differ from the average.
Exactly. Think of it like measuring how scattered a bunch of marbles are on a table.
Okay, I can see that. If they're all clustered together, the variance is low, but if they're scattered all over the place, the variance is high.
Perfect. That's a great way to visualize it.
And lastly, we have option D, range.
The range is the simplest one.
Simple as how?
It's just the difference between the highest score and the lowest score.
Ah, so it tells you how much ground the data covers, from the smallest value to the largest.
Exactly. It's like looking at the extremes.
Okay, so the question was, which statistical measure indicates how much scores in a data set differ from the mean?
Right.
We've looked at all those measures.
The answer is C, variance. Remember, it's all about measuring how spread out those data points are from the average.
Gotcha. Variance is all about the spread. Okay, final question for this section, question 180. This one's about feminist therapy, a topic that feels incredibly relevant, especially now.
It is. It's about understanding how social forces impact our well-being.
The question is, what is the focus of feminist therapy?
Okay.
And the options are A, exploring unconscious conflicts, B, challenging societal norms that contribute to oppression, C, resolving cognitive distortions, D, establishing clear family boundaries. Lots to unpack here.
It is a rich and complex approach.
So let's jump right in. Option A, exploring unconscious conflicts.
That sounds more like psychodynamic therapy. Think Freud and the unconscious.
Right, delving into those hidden desires and motivations. But that's not the main focus of feminist therapy.
Not quite. Feminist therapy is more about understanding how those external forces, like societal norms and power structures, can impact our mental health.
Ah, so it's less about the internal unconscious world and more about those external societal factors.
Exactly.
Okay, so what about option B? challenging societal norms that contribute to oppression.
That's it. That's the core of feminist therapy.
So it's about recognizing how those societal norms, those power imbalances, those exotisms, can really impact individuals' emotional well-being.
Yes, it's about understanding how those external forces shape our internal experiences.
Makes sense. Like a feminist therapist might help a client explore how gender stereotypes have limited their career choices, or how societal expectations of beauty have impacted their self-esteem.
Exactly. It's about empowering clients to challenge those norms and advocate for themselves.
Okay, what about option C, resolving cognitive distortions?
Cognitive distortions are those negative thought patterns that can trap us.
Right, like those self-critical thoughts that can fuel anxiety and depression.
Exactly. While a feminist therapist might address those distortions, it's not their central focus.
Okay, so it's a tool, but not the main goal. And lastly, option D, establishing clear family boundaries.
Boundaries are super important in all relationships, for sure.
Right. But is that the primary focus of feminist therapy?
Not really. Feminist therapy's primary focus is on those broader societal issues and their impact on individuals, not just family dynamics.
Okay, so it's about zooming out to see the bigger picture, how those societal forces impact individuals and their mental health. So the question was, what is the focus of feminist therapy?
Yes.
And we've discussed all 4 options.
The correct answer is B, challenging societal norms that contribute to oppression.
Right. It's about empowering individuals by helping them understand and challenge those societal forces.
Exactly. It's about recognizing that our personal struggles are often connected to those larger social issues.
Wow, we just covered a lot of ground. From solution-focused therapy to defense mechanisms to feminist therapy. It's amazing how much we've learned just by breaking down these practice questions.
Right. And you're doing an amazing job.
Well, your expertise in these awesome questions from my AI study buddy are definitely helping those concepts sink in.
I'm glad to hear it. You're clearly putting in the work and it's paying off.
And until next time, happy studying and best of luck on the NCE.
1, 2, 3.
Nice to be in orbit.